Is prayer just talking to the sky? A hopeful whisper cast into the vast, silent emptiness of the cosmos? Or is it something more? Is it a key, forged in the fires of faith, capable of unlocking the very doors of heaven? For millennia, humanity has looked upward, our voices rising in moments of desperation, of gratitude, of profound need. We have asked for rain, for healing, for deliverance. We have wondered, does anyone hear? Does anyone answer? The ancient texts of the Bible suggest that the answer is a resounding, world-altering yes. It tells us that prayer is not a monologue, but a dialogue with the divine. From fire falling from a cloudless sky to a king's death sentence being reversed, these stories are more than just historical accounts. They are powerful testaments to a fundamental truth, that a connection exists between our world and a higher reality, a connection activated by the simple yet profound act of prayer. These are not tales of magic or wishful thinking. They are chronicles of moments when the veil between heaven and earth grew thin, when human vulnerability met divine power. These 5 stories show that when people truly pray with all their heart and all their soul, God moves. Welcome to Kingdom Keys Seekers, where we delve into these timeless Bible stories, not just as relics of the past, but as living narratives that reveal spiritual truths capable of changing our lives today. We believe these ancient words hold a resonance, an energy that can still speak to our deepest questions and our most pressing needs. We invite you to join us on this journey of discovery, to explore the moments where faith became sight and prayer became a force of nature. What you are about to hear might just reignite your belief in the power of prayer. So lean in closer, quiet the noise of the world around you for just a moment and listen. Listen to the echoes of prayers answered centuries ago, prayers that still reverberate with power and with promise. We will journey to a windswept mountaintop, stand in the solemn chambers of a dying king, and witness the impossible unfold. Because in these stories, we find the blueprint for our own faith. We find the courage to believe that our own voices, our own prayers, can also touch the heart of God and invite His power into our lives. Imagine Israel on Mount Carmel, its soul hanging in the balance. The people wavered between the God of their ancestors and the seductive allure of Baal, championed by Queen Jezebel. A spiritual drought mirrored the physical one that had plagued the land. Into this stepped Elijah, a rugged prophet with unwavering conviction. He challenged the prophets of Baal, "Let the God who answers by fire, let him be God." The prophets cried out, danced, and cut themselves. But the sky remained silent. Elijah mocked them, exposing the emptiness of their worship. As evening approached, only silence remained. Then it was Elijah's turn. There was no frenzy, only a quiet, deliberate reverence. He began with an act of restoration. He found the Lord's altar, which lay in ruins, a symbol of Israel's broken relationship with God. He took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes of Israel, and began to rebuild it, declaring that what was broken could be made whole again. After rebuilding the altar and placing the wood and the sacrifice upon it, he did the unthinkable. He commanded that 4 large jars be filled with water and poured over the offering and the wood 3 times. There could be no doubt, no trickery, no hidden spark. He was creating a humanly impossible situation. He was demonstrating his absolute trust in a God, for whom the impossible is merely another opportunity to display His glory. A hush fell over the mountain. All eyes were on this lone prophet and his waterlogged altar. Elijah prepared to speak to the God he knew was listening. Elijah's prayer was short, direct, and focused on God's name and people. He identified the Lord as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, connecting to their covenant history. He asked that God would be known in Israel, and that Elijah was His servant. The heart of his prayer, "Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." Then the fire of the Lord fell. It consumed everything. The people fell prostrate, declaring, "The Lord, He is God." One man's bold prayer silenced doubt, toppled false religion, and turned hearts back to God. Imagine being at the pinnacle of your life. You're a king, respected and righteous. You've led your nation, Judah, in a great spiritual revival, cleansing the land of idols and restoring the worship of the one true God. You faced down the mighty Assyrian army and witnessed God deliver your city, Jerusalem, in a miraculous display of power. This was King Hezekiah. He was a man who had walked with God, a leader who had trusted in him. And then, at the height of his influence and in the prime of his life, he received a devastating message. The prophet Isaiah, the very man who had delivered God's message of deliverance from the Assyrians, came to him with a new word from the Lord. There was no comfort in it, no ambiguity. The message was stark and final. This is what the Lord says: put your house in order, because you are going to die. You will not recover. It was a death sentence delivered not by a physician but by God's own messenger. The shadow of the grave fell suddenly over the royal palace. All his accomplishments, all his reforms, all his plans for the future seemed destined to end. For Hezekiah, this news must have been crushing. It wasn't just the fear of death, but the seeming injustice of it all. He had served God faithfully. He had torn down the high places of idol worship and called his people back to the covenant. Why would his life be cut short now? The kingdom was still vulnerable. His legacy was incomplete. He had no son to succeed him on the throne, leaving the future of David's royal line in jeopardy. The divine decree felt like a cruel and premature end to a life dedicated to serving the very God who now commanded its conclusion. Faced with this immutable verdict, what could he do? There was no court of appeal, no higher authority to petition. The word had come from the Lord himself through his most trusted prophet. For most, this would be a moment of utter despair, a time for resignation and quiet acceptance of fate. But Hezekiah was not most men. He had built his life on a relationship with God, a relationship he believed was a two-way conversation. Even with a divine death sentence hanging over him, he believed that conversation was not yet over. He would turn to the one source of power he knew. Hezekiah did not argue with Isaiah. He did not protest or bargain with the prophet. His response was immediate, personal, and deeply intimate. The Bible tells us that Hezekiah turned his face to the wall. This was a profound and symbolic act. He turned away from the prophet, the messenger of his doom. He turned away from his royal court, from the duties and distractions of his kingship. He turned away from everything and everyone in the world to be utterly alone with his God. The wall represented the end of his earthly options, the finality of his situation. It was there at his lowest point that he made his appeal. With his face to the cold, unyielding stone, he prayed. It was not a prayer of grandeur or eloquent prose. It was the raw, unfiltered cry of a broken heart. He wept bitterly, his tears tracing paths on his face, a testament to his anguish and desperation. His words were a simple, heartfelt reminder of his life's devotion. Remember, Lord, how I've walked before you faithfully and with wholehearted devotion and have done what is good in your eyes. He was not boasting of his own righteousness as a means to earn salvation, but rather appealing to the covenant relationship he had cherished. This was a prayer of profound vulnerability. Hezekiah was laying his entire life, his entire record of service before the Lord. It was as if he was saying, look at our history together, look at my heart. Has my journey with you truly come to an end? The tears he shed were not just tears of sorrow, but tears of fervent intercession. He was pouring out his soul, holding nothing back. In that dark and lonely moment, facing a wall that symbolized his imminent death, his prayer became a bridge, spanning the chasm between a divine decree and a desperate human heart reaching for mercy. Think of the courage this required. He was essentially challenging a divine verdict. He was asking God to reconsider, to change his mind. This is one of the most mysterious and powerful aspects of prayer revealed in Scripture. The idea that our passionate, sincere appeals can influence the heart of God. Hezekiah was not passively accepting his fate. He was actively engaging with his Creator, banking everything on the belief that God was not a distant, unmovable force, but a relational being who listens, who cares, and who is moved by the tears of his children. The response was astonishingly swift. The prophet Isaiah had not even left the palace when the word of the Lord came to him again. The prayer from the king's chamber, the silent turn to the wall, the bitter tears, they had reached heaven and prompted an immediate reversal. God commanded Isaiah, go back and tell Hezekiah, the ruler of my people, I have heard your prayer and I have seen your tears. I will heal you. This new message was a complete and total overturning of the previous one. The God who had pronounced an end to Hezekiah's life was now promising to restore it. "I have heard your prayer, I have seen your tears," he declared. "I will add 15 years to your life, and I will deliver you and this city from the hand of the king of Assyria." Hezekiah's story stands as a profound testament to the power of personal, heartfelt prayer. It teaches us that no situation is beyond the reach of earnest intercession. It shows that God is a loving Father who responds to the faith and tears of his children. Is there a pain more profound than the ache of an unanswered longing? For many, this dream is the sound of a child's laughter. But what happens when that dream is met with silence? This was the world of a woman named Hannah. Her value, her very identity, was tied to a gift she could not give. In the ancient hills of Ephraim, Hannah's life was a study in contrasts. She was loved by her husband, Elkanah. She was one of 2 wives, and the other, Peninnah, had been blessed with many children. This blessing became a weapon, a constant, painful reminder of what Hannah lacked. Year after year, the family would make the sacred pilgrimage to Shiloh, turning a season of worship into a season of weeping and profound anguish. Elkanah would give her a double portion of the sacrificial meal. "Don't I mean more to you than 10 sons?" It was a sorrow that lived in a place his love could not reach. There comes a moment in our deepest despair when words fail us. It is in this space of raw, unfiltered feeling that the most honest prayers are born. Not from the mind, but from the very soul. After a painful meal, Hannah rose and walked toward the temple. She stood there, a solitary figure, and she began to pray. The Bible tells us she was in bitterness of soul and she wept in anguish. Her lips moved, shaping the syllables of her heartbreak, but no sound escaped. Observing her was Eli, the high priest, and he drew the wrong conclusion. "How long will you be drunk?" he demanded. She answered him with the pure, unvarnished truth of her condition. "I have poured out my soul before the Lord." In that moment, Eli, the priest, saw her, a devout soul in holy desperation. He spoke words that anchored her hope. "Go in peace," he said, "and the God of Israel grant your petition." A transformation took place within Hannah. She left with a countenance that was no longer sad. The burden had been lifted because she had fully surrendered. She returned to her husband and she ate, having found peace. In the course of time, Hannah conceived and bore a son. In the joy of her answered prayer, she named him Samuel, heard by God. When the time came, Hannah made the pilgrimage to Shiloh once more, bringing her son. She declared the faithfulness of God to Eli. "For this child I prayed," she said, "and the Lord has granted me what I asked." Samuel would grow to become one of Israel's greatest prophets. In the early days, a new community was learning to follow their Savior. Their leader, James, had been executed by King Herod. Now Simon Peter was arrested and thrown into the deepest part of the prison. Chained between 2 soldiers, his fate seemed sealed. The odds were insurmountable. Peter, trapped by stone and iron, faced a situation beyond human intervention. The loss of another leader felt like a death blow, but the church saw an opportunity for a different kind of power. Their strength was in a connection to a higher authority. A small group gathered to engage in a spiritual battle through humble, persistent prayer. They were petitioning the very architect of the universe on behalf of their leader. Their prayers ascended beyond the prison walls and into the throne room of heaven. They were fighting with the most powerful weapon they possessed, ceaseless prayer. The night was deep and the prison was silent. Peter was asleep, a profound peace settling over him even as his execution loomed. But while the world slept, heaven was stirring. The fervent prayers of the church had reached the ears of the Almighty, and a response was being dispatched. Suddenly a light shone in the pitch-black darkness of the cell. An angel of the Lord appeared, a messenger from God himself, standing beside the sleeping apostle. As Peter stirred, something miraculous happened. The heavy iron chains simply fell away. The first set of guards they passed were oblivious, lost in a supernatural slumber. The divine rescue was underway, a silent, powerful procession moving toward the light of freedom. They moved like ghosts through the heavily fortified prison. The soldiers remained completely unaware, held in a state of suspended animation. Peter, still convinced this was all a vivid dream, simply followed his celestial guide. This was not an escape, it was a divine escort. They reached the great iron gate that led out into the city. As they approached, the gate swung open of its own accord. It opened silently as if welcoming them into the freedom of the night. Once they were out on the street, the angel's mission was complete. He departed, leaving Peter standing alone in the cool night air. "Now I know for sure," he declared to himself, "that the Lord has rescued me from Herod's clutches." He knew immediately where he had to go, to the house of Mary, where he knew the church was gathered. Their prayers had been answered so directly, so miraculously, that it overwhelmed their ability to believe it. King Jehoshaphat and Judah faced annihilation. A vast alliance, the Moabites, Ammonites, and Munites, marched against them. Panic rippled through the kingdom. Jehoshaphat, a man of faith, turned to God, proclaiming a fast for all of Judah. The people gathered at the temple in Jerusalem. Jehoshaphat prayed aloud, declaring faith and recounting God's power. He confessed their helplessness. "We have no power. We do not know what to do, but our eyes are on you." A model for facing impossible giants. We don't know what to do, but our eyes are on God. In the silence, a palpable tension hung over the assembly. They had laid their fears at the feet of God, searching for a sign. All of Jerusalem was still, listening for a response. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jahaziel, an ordinary man. Jahaziel delivered God's answer, a message that would change everything. "Do not be afraid, for the battle is not yours, but God's." This was a call to faith, not arms. "Tomorrow, march down against them. You will not have to fight this battle. Stand firm and see the deliverance the Lord will give you." They were to be front-row spectators to their own salvation, trusting God's promise. Upon hearing God's promise, the king and people responded with humility and worship. Their fear was replaced by faith, their anxiety by adoration. They began to celebrate the victory, worshipping a God who had already declared the battle won. The next morning, Jehoshaphat appointed singers to lead the army. The temple choir led the military procession, their voices their only weapon. As they marched toward the vast army, they sang, "Give thanks to the Lord, for his love endures forever." As they sang, the Lord acted, setting ambushes against the enemy armies, causing confusion and self-destruction. Without a sword drawn, their enemies annihilated themselves. The battle was over before it began. God had fought for them. When we place our battles in God's hands and face them with praise, He secures a victory beyond our own ability. From Elijah on Mount Carmel to Hezekiah, Hannah, Peter, and Jehoshaphat, these stories are more than just ancient tales. They are powerful testimonies of moments when heaven touched earth. God leaned in to listen to the cries of His people and responded with fire, healing, life, freedom, and victory. These accounts reveal that we are not alone and that there is a power available to us. If God heard them, could He be waiting to hear from you? Let these stories renew your faith. Prayer is a conversation, a relationship, a surrender. Take a step of faith today. Subscribe to Kingdom Keys Seekers and share this video. Prayer is our greatest weapon. When people pray, things change. Heaven listens and God answers.